Something is happening in the hypercar world that Bugatti cannot afford to ignore. While the company is already locked in a very public standoff with Matt Armstrong over his controversial Chiron Pur Sport rebuild in Miami, another YouTuber has just bought a broken Bugatti. McCann recently spent £900,000 on a Bugatti Veyron. That won't even start. And the first person he called for advice wasn't anyone at Bugatti. It was Matt Armstrong. What's unfolding right now, in real time, in 2026, could change hypercar ownership forever. Here's the situation. McCann just purchased a Bugatti Veyron for £900,000. But this isn't some straightforward used hypercar deal. The gearbox is completely destroyed. There's no reverse gear. The car has been sitting off the road for 3 full years, untouched and deteriorating. It is, by every practical measure, a 900,000-pound sculpture that cannot move under its own power. But this isn't just any Veyron. This is a Mansory Vincerò edition, one of the rarest Veyrons ever produced. Originally customized for Middle Eastern royalty at a cost of roughly 300,000 euros on top of the already staggering base price. Full exposed carbon fiber bodywork, polished aluminum arches, a completely bespoke interior, and a specification that exists nowhere else on Earth. When running properly, this car is conservatively worth at least £1.6 million. Even broken, even neglected, even sitting dormant for 3 years, Mark saw something that most people would walk straight past. He saw an opportunity. But that opportunity only works under one very specific condition. He has to be able to fix it without going through Bugatti. And that's the problem Bugatti has created for itself. Their official quote to replace the gearbox came in at £300,000. $300,000. That's more than most people spend on their entire house. All to repair a single component inside a car that already cost nearly $1 million to acquire. At Bugatti's pricing, Mark would have roughly $1.2 million invested in a car worth $1.6 million. The margin is thin. The risk is enormous. And Bugatti knows full well that this kind of pricing keeps most independent owners locked firmly inside their ecosystem. Because if no one else can do the work, owners have no choice but to pay whatever Bugatti decides to charge. That's where Matt Armstrong enters the picture. When McCann was weighing this decision on one of the rarest Bugattis in existence, his trusted advisor wasn't someone from the official dealer network. It wasn't a certified Bugatti technician with decades of factory training. It wasn't an authorized service center in London or Paris. It was Matt Armstrong, a YouTuber, a self-taught builder from the north of England, someone with 0 official Bugatti credentials, 0 factory endorsements, 0 corporate backing. The same person is currently in Miami right now, rebuilding a crashed Chiron Pur Sport belonging to another YouTuber, FXG, despite Bugatti's absolute refusal to support the project. The same person the Bugatti CEO personally made a public video about, explaining in carefully measured corporate language why independent Bugatti repairs shouldn't happen. The same person who has become, against every official preference and corporate directive, the internet's most visible independent Bugatti specialist. Mark called Matt on video to walk him through the broken Veyron and asked for his honest assessment. Not a sales pitch, not a corporate consultation. A real conversation between 2 people who understand cars and understand value. And what followed revealed exactly why Bugatti is so deeply uncomfortable with the independent builder movement gaining momentum. Matt didn't dismiss the idea. He didn't laugh it off as impossible. He didn't tell Mark to call Bugatti and pay whatever they asked. Instead, he did what any genuine specialist would do when presented with a complex problem. He started analyzing. He considered the mechanical issues. He talked through the economics. He weighed the risks against the potential reward. He drew on months of hands-on knowledge he's been accumulating through the Chiron rebuild. Knowledge that didn't come from a Bugatti training manual, but from physically taking these machines apart and putting them back together. He treated Mark's question the way an experienced consultant treats a high-stakes decision, because at this point in his journey, that's exactly what Matt Armstrong has become. During the call, Mark said something that cut straight to the heart of what Bugatti fears most. You're the man to get Bugatti parts as well, aren't you? You've got inside connections. It was a casual comment, the kind of thing you'd say to someone you genuinely trust as a resource. Matt's response was dripping with sarcasm, but carried undeniable weight beneath it. "Oh yeah, they love me." Everyone watching understood exactly what he meant. Bugatti doesn't love Matt Armstrong. They've publicly opposed his work. They refuse to sell him parts. They've made their position unmistakably clear. But despite all of that opposition, Matt has quietly and methodically built something Bugatti never wanted to exist: a network, suppliers who can source Bugatti-specific components outside the official system, specialists willing to take on work that Bugatti insists only their own technicians should touch, contacts and relationships cultivated not through corporate channels, but through reputation, persistence, and proving again and again that the work can be done to the highest standard without a factory badge. Every connection Matt makes chips away at the wall Bugatti has built around its parts and service ecosystem. Every supplier he identifies creates a new pathway that didn't exist before. Every workaround he discovers becomes a permanent crack in the monopoly. And the deeply uncomfortable truth for Bugatti is simple. Once enough people know those channels exist, the wall can never be rebuilt. You can't erase knowledge that's already been shared with millions of viewers. You can't close a door that the entire internet has already walked through. The fact that McCann called Matt Armstrong before calling Bugatti validates the company's worst fear in the most concrete way possible. Matt is becoming recognized as a legitimate Bugatti specialist despite having zero official certification. Other collectors now trust his judgment on purchases worth nearly £1 million more than they trust the official network. That's not just an inconvenience for Bugatti. That's an existential shift in how their brand is perceived at the ownership level. Matt being consulted as an expert resource by other buyers while simultaneously rebuilding a Chiron that Bugatti refused to support is the exact scenario they were trying to prevent when they went public with their opposition. Matt's analysis of Mark's potential purchase during that call laid bare the real economics of Bugatti ownership in a way the company would rather keep permanently hidden behind closed doors. He broke down the numbers with the kind of clarity that makes corporate pricing strategies very uncomfortable when exposed to daylight. Even in the worst-case scenario, accepting Bugatti's full £300,000 gearbox replacement quote and paying their labor rates without question, Mark would have approximately $1.2 million invested in a car worth $1.6 million. That's a £400,000 margin. Tight for a car at this level, but workable if everything goes according to plan. But Matt knows something that changes the entire equation. And this is a knowledge that makes Bugatti's position genuinely difficult to defend. Independent specialists, specifically a German expert Matt is connected with through the Chiron project, can rebuild the Veyron gearbox for roughly £150,000 instead of Bugatti's $300,000. Half the price. Same result. Same functionality. That single piece of information transforms economics completely. Total investment drops to around £1 million, creating a potential margin of $600,000 instead of $400,000. The deal goes from risky to genuinely compelling. And it only becomes compelling because independent alternatives exist. This is precisely the knowledge Bugatti does not want circulating publicly. It exposes a gap between what these repairs actually cost in terms of parts, labor, and expertise, and what Bugatti charges when they're the only option available. It reveals that a significant portion of their service pricing isn't really about engineering complexity or the extraordinary difficulty of working on these machines. It's about leverage. The leverage that comes from being the only game in town. And once customers realize there are other games available, that leverage starts to evaporate. Matt encouraged Mark to move forward with the purchase specifically because independent repair options make the economics viable. Without those alternatives, Bugatti's pricing would have made the deal financially reckless for anyone who actually ran the numbers honestly. With them, it becomes a smart investment. That single dynamic, the difference between financial recklessness and smart investment, is entirely determined by whether or not the owner is locked into Bugatti's official service ecosystem. And Matt Armstrong is proving, publicly and repeatedly, that no one has to be locked in. This is where the story grows far bigger than two broken Bugattis, sitting in two different countries. What's forming right now, quietly but in full public view, is an independent Bugatti service network that exists entirely outside the company's official ecosystem. Matt Armstrong sits at the center of it. Not because he planned it that way, Not because he drew up some strategic blueprint to challenge a billion-dollar brand, but because every problem he solves and every connection he makes creates infrastructure that others can use. The Chiron rebuild in Miami isn't just one man fixing one car for content. It's a living, breathing proof of concept for an entirely different model of hypercar maintenance. Consider the network that's already taken shape around these projects. There's Bob, the aluminum fabrication specialist handling structural repairs with precision and craftsmanship that rivals anything coming out of a factory environment. There are composite specialists producing carbon fiber panels and components indistinguishable from Bugatti's own production quality. There are part suppliers who have decided they'd rather serve customers than protect a corporate monopoly, providing components that Bugatti claims cannot be obtained outside their official channels. There are fabrication shops creating custom solutions for situations where original parts are either completely unavailable or priced so far beyond reason that replacement becomes impractical. And there are independent specialists scattered across Europe and beyond, proving every single day that deep, genuine Bugatti expertise exists outside the factory walls. It always has. Bugatti just didn't want anyone to know that. Now Mark McCann is tapping into that exact same network for his Mansory Veyron. And this is where the compounding effect becomes impossible for Bugatti to contain. The knowledge Matt gains from the Chiron rebuild directly helps Mark make better, more informed decisions about the Veyron. The connections Matt builds through one project become available for every project that follows. The suppliers he discovers become shared resources for the entire community of independent builders. The techniques he develops get refined and improved upon by others who bring their own expertise to the table. The problems he solved become roadmaps that the next builder can follow, saving months of trial and error. This is how monopolies fracture, not through class action lawsuits or government regulation or dramatic corporate confrontations. They fracture through ordinary people sharing knowledge and building alternative supply chains that make official channels optional rather than mandatory. It happens at ground level, one rebuild at a time, one YouTube video at a time, one shared discovery at a time. And by the time the monopoly holder realizes what's happening, the knowledge is already spread too far and too wide to be recalled. Every successful independent Bugatti repair makes the next one easier and more likely. Every part source identified opens a door that can't be shut again. Every specialist who proves they can handle Bugatti-level work without factory certification expands a talent pool that Bugatti doesn't control. Every rebuild that reaches completion despite official opposition serves as evidence that the barriers were never really about engineering impossibility. They were about control, and control only works when people believe they have no alternatives. Bugatti's dominance over its own aftermarket was built on a single foundation, being the only viable option for serious repairs. Their entire service revenue model depends on customers looking at these machines and believing with absolute certainty that nobody else on earth can work on them competently. But once credible alternatives emerge and prove themselves reliable through documented, visible, publicly shared results, that belief starts to dissolve. And belief, once lost, is nearly impossible to restore. Bugatti still holds significant cards. They can refuse to sell parts directly to Matt Armstrong. They can decline to offer any support for Mark McCann's Veyron rebuild. They can issue carefully worded public statements about safety concerns and the critical importance of factory-trained technicians. They can create restrictive policies, update their terms and conditions, and publish official warnings designed to discourage independent work. All of that is within their power, but none of it addresses the real problem. They cannot stop Matt from documenting every step of his process in YouTube videos that reach millions of viewers worldwide. They cannot prevent independent specialists from developing genuine, verifiable Bugatti expertise through years of hands-on work. They cannot control what happens in the secondary market where used components, salvage parts, and donor vehicles change hands freely between private parties. They cannot shut down a growing network of suppliers and fabricators who have already decided to operate outside the official system. And they absolutely cannot take back knowledge that has already been shared publicly, permanently, and in extraordinary detail. Once the teardown procedures are filmed, once the tolerances are documented, once the wiring diagrams are traced and explained, once the part sources are named on camera, that information belongs to everyone. It lives forever. It reproduces itself every time someone clicks share. Bugatti's greatest competitive advantage in the service space was always information asymmetry. They understood the inner workings of their cars at a level nobody else could match, and they guarded that understanding ferociously. For years, that asymmetry justified their pricing, sustained their monopoly, and kept owners dependent on official channels whether they liked it or not. But Matt Armstrong has spent the better part of a year systematically dismantling that advantage, one painstakingly detailed video at a time. The impossible becomes merely difficult. The proprietary becomes common knowledge. The mystique that once surrounded these machines doesn't disappear entirely, but it transforms from something that protects a corporation into something that inspires independent builders. And that transformation cannot be reversed. Right now, in this moment, two separate Bugatti rebuilds are happening simultaneously on two different continents. Matt Armstrong is rebuilding a crashed Chiron Pur Sport in Miami. Mark McCann is preparing to restore a broken Mansory Veyron in the UK. Both projects are bypassing official Bugatti support entirely. Both journeys are being documented and shared publicly. Both are proving, through action rather than argument, that independence from the manufacturer is not only theoretically possible, but practically achievable. Bugatti is no longer fighting a single road builder with a YouTube channel. They're watching the emergence of an entire parallel ecosystem forming around their brand. One they don't control, one they can't shut down, and one that grows stronger with every passing week. The real battle here was never about one crashed Chiron or one broken Veyron. It was never about Matt Armstrong versus a corporate CEO or about YouTube content versus corporate policy. It's about something far more fundamental. It's about who controls these machines after they're sold. It's about whether a customer who spent £1 million on a car genuinely owns it in every meaningful sense, or merely leases